Stay Sane with Jane, the show that helps you and your business to thrive, not just survive. Tune in each week as Jane connects with guests in the wellness, business and publishing worlds, bringing you the most up-to-date training, techniques, healing and guidance for growth, mindset and motivation. Each session includes a magical guided meditation led by Jane or one of her special guests. Here's your host, Jane Scanlan. Hello and welcome to the 9th episode of Stay Sane with Jane, and we are going to be interviewing Jyoti, who runs and owns and has founded Special Yoga. Special Yoga, it has a belief in the world that where everybody should be able to live with joy, irrespective of the body that they were born into. So for almost 20 years, she's been teaching parents and educating schools, healthcare professionals and carers, and helping them to have practices that will change their lives and the lives of the people that they care for. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
So could you tell us a little bit more about yourself, and we'll get on to Special Yoga?
Sure. So, well, my life involves, having moved down to Bournemouth about 5 years ago now, involves daily swimming and things like that, as well as, a very strong meditation and yoga practice personally. I came across yoga in 1974, which of course in those days, no one was doing yoga, whereas today, it's like quite a common thing to do. And for me, it was like one of those extraordinary aha moments of, wow, this is the practice that's going to heal my childhood trauma and will open up a pathway for my own personal healing. And my recollection of that first class was a very sensory experience. And I don't actually remember the physical practice. So there was chanting and there was incense burning and everybody was dressed in white. And it was really a very, I came away thinking, wow, this is amazing. And they sent me home with a book called the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the spiritual texts of yoga. It's not a spiritual text, philosophical text of yoga, really, which is very much about the playground of the mind and how the mind can attack us and how the mind can how you can change your thoughts to change your reality, which is how you would translate it today. I think a bit more, yogis wouldn't like that particular way of describing. For me, it was about the madness of the mind, and it was really helpful to realize that there was something that made so much sense to me, at an early age when this kinds of practices weren't available.
Yeah. Was this in the UK that you got first introduced to yoga?
Yeah, and I was in my teens, and as I said in 74, this wasn't there was, obviously you had the playoff from the 60s, of kind of trippy and all meditation, all the different things that were happening in the 60s, but and so there was a kind of conversation going on in the world about healing, I suppose, at some level, and meditation, but it was still reserved for a few, not for many. Let's put it that way. And there certainly wasn't yoga on every street corner, that's for sure, like there is today,
Yeah, I can imagine now. It is, you're right, it is in every single high street across the UK, which is fantastic.
And everybody's heard about it too, even if they haven't done it.
Yes, yeah, it is famous now. So back then, were you like maybe the only one out of your group of friends, or leading the way?
And then a few years later, I moved to New York, and I walked past, in the early days of being there, walked past this neon sign that said yoga, and I stepped in and I heard the teacher You know, it didn't have like a reception area. It wasn't pish posh or like, you know, so many of the places today. And you know, it was literally you walked in, you were in the studio, you know, and
Yeah.
I heard the teacher saying to one of his students, you know, use your body as a vehicle of prayer. And I thought, oh, I'm home. That really resonated for me, you know, that kind of very strong spiritual practice of kind of connection that there's something greater than us that I, you know, I've known since I was a young child. So, you know, and I, you know, was talking to God from or talking to something anyway. I
Yeah.
didn't know what it was necessarily as a child, but you know, I always had another conversation going on. So, and I always felt like I was safe from that perspective, even through the trauma. So,
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah, I really feel like children have this divine connection because they've just come into the physical world.
yeah,
And I remember holding my daughter when, you know, she was months old, but she'd always stare off into this black space wherever it was. She'd be staring off into it and then come back, and I was like, oh, I wonder where you are, where do you go?
mm,
They're off connecting
yeah, yeah,
to a
definitely.
higher source.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. So that was my kind of foray into yoga. And then after studying with that teacher for about 10 years, he said to me, go and teach. You know, so again, in those days, there weren't teacher training programs. It was still very much that kind of teacher to student. Um, you know, when you were ready, and not
Yeah.
until you were ready. So it wasn't about your choice. And I hadn't intended to teach anyway. That hadn't been my plan. It was just like, oh, okay, you know. And of course, you feel like you don't know enough, and you know all of the kind of
Yeah.
insecurities that arise. So shortly after that, I came back to the UK and I did a training. I did do a training at that time. It was late 80s, I think, with some osteopaths, which was very mechanical.
Mhm.
But it gave me the confidence that because of the knowledge I didn't have in anatomy and physiology, I suppose,
You
body
gained it through them. Yeah.
gained it through them. And I found it a really difficult course to do because it had no spiritual content. It was very kind of analytical about how the body works and all the mechanics to it.
Uh-huh.
But it was a really good, you know, it kind of fed a piece of me that I didn't feel confident in. So
Yeah.
it gave me something, you know, but it wasn't easy.
No.
And then my
No.
kind of opened up from there, really, you know, just I learned that, you know, you have to learn to be really, really, really present with your students. You know, class plans don't work, no expectations. I had a blind man and his dog showed up, I think, in my second or third class where I was teaching adults. And, you know, I hadn't worked with, I mean, I'd been around blind people before, but not in that capacity. And of course, there was a woman in the class who was terrified of dogs. So you know, just navigating that and managing that. And you know, you can't teach the same way when you have somebody who's visually impaired, who can't see you, who can't
Yes.
demonstrate. So you have to kind of rethink how you explain what communication is, how you do it. So it kind of opened up a whole new world for me, just being gifted to me, really.
Yes.
Students that rocked up in my classes. And then shortly after that, a head teacher came and it was, you know, was practicing with me and said, I think my school needs you, you know. And it was in a really deprived part of London. And of course, in those days, in the late 80s, there weren't diagnoses of autism and ADHD
Mm.
today. So these
Yeah.
kids were labeled as bad kids as opposed to kids who might need some help. And so the whole picture of that was quite different in those days. And I witnessed kids who felt like me, you know, twiddling and twitching and couldn't sit still and not connected to their bodies. They're very disconnected. And I thought,
Mhm.
interesting, I know that one, you know. So I thought, well, really don't know what I'm doing, but I'll just play around. I'll just use the techniques that I work for me, make them child friendly without making them play. And so I've always come to it from the therapeutic perspective of, you know, how do we regulate ourselves, and you know, what is it that's going to balance our nervous systems, that's
Yeah.
going to actually keep us connected to our bodies, keep us connected to the earth, you know, and at the same time not lose that connection to spirit.
Yeah, it's fascinating that a school back in the 80s was so open to having holistic health.
Mm,
You know, that's amazing.
mm.
It's I wish all schools could have, you know, yoga and meditation practices within them.
Well, I think a lot of them do now, but I think there's a lot of children's yoga that's not therapeutic. In actually it's a play activity as
Yeah.
opposed to a therapeutic tool where you're really looking at regulation,
Mm.
heart and connection. And the other thing that I've learned over the years about both being a parent and also just doing the work with the children is that as an adult around the child, we can't, if we're dysregulated as the adult, we cannot regulate a child. And of course science has backed that up now. If you look at Stephen Porges's work, around the polyvagal theory and all that, it's very much about that connection between each other that creates co-regulation. So we work a lot now, or we always have done. I mean, I've always believed that our state really matters. And I think that, we're so busy trying to fix the kids that we were unaware of how important our state is, and we're also not brought up, people weren't brought up to understand that taking care of yourself matters. Because
Yeah.
it was do everything for everybody else, because that's what's going to make you feel good in the world and that's what's important in the world. But actually, you can't give from an empty pot.
Yeah, definitely. And I think through my own experiences that as I've grown and developed and healed as a person, um, thankfully I started that journey before I had my daughter, but there was still quite a lot to go afterwards. But as I've kind of calmed and grounded into myself, so has she. And
Mhm,
it's been a beautiful kind of process to watch, look back on.
mhm.
Could you tell us a little bit more about how you got started? So we've heard a bit of your journey, New York, UK, working in schools. How did special yoga become?
Well, what happened was that I was teaching, from the late 80s, and uh, more and more children were coming to me, and then um, it kind of struck me one day that actually what I was really connected to from my heart was children with disabilities and more special educational needs. And I just found myself following that path, and met a teacher who was doing that work at that time. And she asked me to open a centre in London and house the work and so on and so forth. So that was really how it was built. And I was seeing a lot of kids at home, and it sort of got a bit overwhelming to have so many people in and out my house. And at that time, also, I had adopted my second daughter, and it was really disruptive for her with her attachment needs to have too many people in the house. So I needed
Mhm.
to create a separation between work and home,
Yeah.
which really wasn't separated at all. And so I opened a centre in London in must be 2002, 2003, somewhere around there. We set it up as a registered charity, and we're not a charity now, but we were in those days. And we found a very beautiful center, and I wondered how we were going to manage it. And just it was talk to God, and then you know who to phone, and the next thing you know is you're there and you've got it. And we used to treat, I think by the time we ended, we were treating about 150 kids a week from there, approximately.
Wow.
And we had a number of practitioners who had been trained with us, and we were running training programs from day one, as well as having classes, as well as doing kirtan, as well as doing lots of different spiritual practices. And I'd always kind of wanted to make yoga available to everybody, because at that point in time, certainly in those days, it was really only for the middle classes, and I just hated it,
Okay.
because I just wanted it to be everybody to be able to get it, you know.
Yeah. So, when you say only available to the middle classes, was that for financial reasons?
People who could pay for it. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was quite expensive, I think, for most people. So, um, and I think it was sort of seen as a kind of middle class activity. You know what I mean? So, and it needed to make, now today it's much more accessible anyway. But in the early days, it wasn't. definitely. So
Yeah,
yeah, there was a really big call for me. So we were able to, because we were a charity, we were able to help the children that couldn't afford it, and we had, and I think that having a child with special needs crosses all eco-social boundaries anyway.
it does. Yeah.
We used to have some beautiful. We used to do one of my favorite classes that we used to do there was a family session for children with cerebral palsy and PMLD, which is more complex needs, and you'd get amazing all these mothers from all walks of life rocking up, and they would just have discussions about their children's feeding tubes and this, that, and the other, just the conditions,
Yes.
medicalization, the challenges, the beauties, all of it. And they just all got on. And it was just so extraordinary. And they also made friends with each other.
That's beautiful.
They used to go, I would see them in the local park walking together with their wheelchairs. And, when one of the kids was in hospital, other mothers would rally around and drop coffee down there. And, they really took care of each other. And even today, 20 odd years later, they're still friends.
That's beautiful. So it's not only help heal the groups, the training, it's building a
Community.
community, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And communities, I
We
don't
need.
know, the love just grows, doesn't it? And the support.
Yeah. It was really, yeah. I mean, that was my most heartwarming class that I did, I think, and just seeing them all hang out together. We didn't do that much yoga, but they, just bringing them together was so beautiful, and yoga isn't something you do anyway. It's a state of being, really. I
Yeah.
think you do yoga, but actually we don't do yoga. We become yoga.
Ooh. Would you like to explain that a little bit more for the
You know,
viewers, listeners?
Sure. I mean, I think that, yoga is perceived as something that, where you contort yourself into like pretzel-like shapes, and in a class, you might get a bit of breathing, and if you're lucky, you get a bit of relaxation at the end. But actually, it's a state of being. There's a whole philosophy behind yoga, and it's a really beautiful philosophy, actually. And there are in one of the primary texts, they describe that there are 8 limbs of yoga, of which one is the physical practice, and one is the breath work, and then the others are different states of meditation, I suppose, where you kind of get the mind out of you learn how to manage your mind so that you can be more connected.
Oh,
And that's really what
fantastic.
yoga is where we
Mm,
stay in a flow, what we would call today is that kind of flow state of being. you know
yeah. You can't stop um, maybe negative things happening around you, but you can definitely change the way you react to them and flow with them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's why yoga becomes a state of being, as
Mm.
opposed to something you do. And at the end of the day, your life isn't really going to change if you can get your leg behind your head.
No.
But your life will change if you learn how to live with live, in a really heartful place, and you learn how to manage your thoughts, and you learn to become the master of your mind.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
That's what's going to change. That's what's going to change your life. In truth.
Mm. So, talking of changing lives, I know you do a lot of changing lives through special yoga. So, if there are people in the audience that are thinking, oh, what would it look like? What would it look like to work with Jyoti, to work with the special yoga team?
Well, in 2020, when COVID hit, we went online. So we run online trainings now that consist of live webinars, self-study, and also study groups that are all held by one of the senior special yoga practitioners. And there's a journey that you could choose to take through special yoga that would, take you from foundation to level 1 to level 2. And it's the level 2 crowd that are now training alongside me, or actually oftentimes training without me, and also supporting the new students coming in. That's one pathway in. We also have just opened up some short courses in different subjects for both parents and educators, that might be around dyslexia, that might be around self-care, I mean, really practical self-care stuff, or behavior in the classroom, or how to keep your classroom regulated, or how to use yoga for cerebral palsy and PMLD, the children who you would think, yeah, they can't do yoga because they can't move themselves. That kind of thing. So we've got lots of short courses that we've just created as well. So there's lots of different pathways into working with us. And it really depends on, what calls you, I suppose, and what's going to be useful to you. I mean, a lot of our courses are, recently our courses have been very much educator filled with educators, but we've just opened an autism course, and most of the people on this one are parents, interestingly. So it's all, and there's always a combination, and I think that's always interesting too, is that when you get people together and an educator can listen to a parent, from a different perspective, because our work is very heart-led, and one of the first practices we teach you is a heart meditation, which I can share later on in the session.
Fantastic.
So we're very much about, let's drop in here, and get away from all of this, and I often think that actually, in a way, the children are brought here, to us as a gift to help our emotional and spiritual evolution, actually. And as we shift, then they also shift.
Yeah, I have to say the growth that I've seen in my daughter's spiritual, mental and emotional over the past few years has been like astounding, actually. Absolutely astounding. And I think it really is that kind of spiritual practice that you're talking about. And for us as well, it's kind of grounding into nature, which I know you do so much of that as well.
Yeah.
Being we moved from London as well, and just being here by the sea, by the New Forest as well. It's just so magical for the mental health, for emotional health,
Yeah.
and obviously the physical health of, you get to walk about, see, swim, dip, all of those things.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, what kind of piqued my mind there, because I knew that you worked with children with ADHD, autism. I didn't know you worked with children with dyslexia.
Mhm.
And in my head, for the other kind of different abilities, I can really see how special yoga would help. With dyslexia, I have dyslexia. I can't kind of compute it in my brain. Could you explain a little bit? Because
So
a lot of the interviewees that have come on are also dyslexic. They've also got neurodiverse children. So yeah, this would be very, very interesting.
if you I mean, first of all, we're not here to fix the condition. So
Yeah.
but I think that so that there's a lot of different pictures. If you're just looking at dyslexia, there's a lot of different pictures. So first of all, the children lack confidence because um, they're not encouraged to kind of accept and be okay with and work with the condition as opposed to against it. So that's first of all. You also have memory, things with memory crossing midline of the body. So if you look at a lot of the dyslexia practices, not yoga ones, but ones that where they would work with you, what they're doing, if you watch them, is they're crossing midline of the body. They're motor planning, motor coordination. They're building on that. And I think that a lot of the yoga that we would look at with that population would offer that in a perhaps more holistic way. And also yoga builds confidence. So you can work with different aspects of balance. You can work with, in terms of balancing your physical body. You can work with your emotional body. And so every movement that you do in yoga, every, what they call them asanas, but and that's a posture. So
Yeah.
every posture has an emotional, physical, energetic, spiritual, even physiological impact on your system. And when you start to really understand that, you can put together specific practices that are going to work in different ways for different conditions. And not every child with dyslexia is the same. In the same way, I've worked with thousands and thousands, tens of
Yeah.
thousands of children with autism. I've never met two the same. So you're
Yeah.
always working with the person, not the condition. That's the first thing. But what you're looking at is, what's the energetic and emotional picture that's going on here? So different breath work can help open up brain pathways.
Yeah.
No. So I think that there's a lot of different pathways into supporting dyslexia depending on what's present. I also noticed a long time ago, I was working with a number of children with dyslexia who had been given the diagnosis of dyslexia years and years back, and I all noticed they all had a very similar physical way they sat. So they slumped a lot. They were very weak in their core, which, an inner strength also impacts your outer strength. So there's a lot of different things that was witnessing. I also noticed quite low energy, kidney energy. So again, there are practices that can help build and sustain, help support that. I mean, in our work, we use sound, we use different massage techniques, that come from, Chinese traditions, that come from, different traditions. We use, Indian techniques, Chinese techniques. You've got Ayurveda, you've got traditional Chinese medicine, all of which has different, pathways to opening up energetic and emotional blockages, to help reach the potential for that person. I'm not saying we heal dyslexia, because that's not what we're doing, but
Yeah.
we're supporting it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And it's actually helped me figure out sort of my own journey with dyslexia as well. Because as a child, even when I went to secondary school, I really, really struggled. But now, if you saw my writing and my spelling, you wouldn't know at all that I was dyslexic.
Mhm,
And I've never kind of, maybe I've never kind of delved into why that is. But I would kind of always say to people, oh, I think my dyslexia is sort of healed or changed, like as I've grown, as my brain has developed, and also as the big shifts happened when I was living more of a heartfelt life, shall we
mhm,
say, and more personal development. So
mhm,
yeah, that really makes total sense, because I've been rewiring my brain
mhm.
through the
I mean, we have
process.
neuroplasticity, so that's possible. But the other thing that kind of popped into my head, and I think this is not just about dyslexia, I think it's about all of us actually, is that to be in the optimal state for learning, or thriving or
Yeah.
function, we have the optimal state is where we're regulated, where our autonomic nervous system is in balance, where we're peaceful in our hearts. And the interesting thing is that when we regulate our nervous system, your thoughts change.
Yes, they really do, don't they?
So then you start to be able to function optimally. If you think about what it feels like to be really anxious and really stressed, that's usually where everything crosses. If you've got that brain that crosses wires, it's going to cross much more when your anxiety levels are very high. And of course, in secondary school, you've got children, there's so much anxiety in schools, so much
Yeah.
anxiety in schools. So how on earth, if you think about it, are these children who've got that additional challenge of dyslexia, dyspraxia, or autism, or whatever it may be, whatever diagnosis it may be, how on earth are they supposed to function in an anxious environment?
Because they really pick up on all the energy all around, don't they?
of course.
Very
That's
empathetic.
why I think it's more and more important to actually get the adults around the children regulated, so that it's being held from a regulated place.
Yeah. So how, if there's teachers listening, if there's schools listening, how can they get special yoga in?
We run insights, twilights. I mean, I've been doing in-service training in schools for years and years and years. And we bespoke it for the school's needs.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So if you want a workshop specifically on dyslexia, we can do that. If you want one on self-care for teachers, we can do that. If you want one for reducing behavior in the classrooms, we can do that. I mean, we will modify the practices, or bespoke the trainings to support the needs. And really, for the most part, the practices are relatively similar from one thing to another, but the approach is different.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, so if you were to give some advice or kind of some top tips about regulating, probably, or changing the environment, what would they be? Something that we could all step into doing quite easily from like today onwards.
Well, I think that we need to value self-care. That's first and foremost, and not feel like it's something that it's selfish to take that time for yourself. And I think there's so many people still in the world that and I hear it regularly, actually. Oh, no, I haven't got time for me, So that's number one, is take time for you, because if you do that, you're going to be of greater service to everybody else, let alone for yourself, and we
Yeah.
deserve it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with taking care of you. So that's first of all. And I think it's really, even if you commit, and I think the other thing that happens is, oh no, I haven't got an hour, so I'm not going to do anything.
Yes, that's
So
so true.
you can change your state in a matter of minutes. It's a matter of commitment and deciding that you're going to do that. So I would suggest that every morning you kind of take that moment to go, okay, so I'm going to commit to 5 minutes today, or 10 minutes today, or whatever you feel you can manage. Don't do something you can't manage. Because as soon as you start to create something that's unmanageable and you don't do it, then you beat yourself up, and then you go, and then it makes it worse. So then you get into that horrible cycle.
Yes.
So do something that you can manage. 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter what it is. Just do something every day that's going to support you. Now, that could be standing in nature. It could be holding your heart. It could be singing. It could be swimming. It could be doing some yoga positions. It could be doing some breathing. It doesn't matter. Just start somewhere.
Yeah.
It's that commitment to you that you can then, that you'll find that if you do that and you start to change how you feel, then you're going to want to do more of it.
Definitely, and I think that's perfect advice. One of my friends years ago, she wanted to start doing meditation, but even the thought of it, it would send her into more anxiety of where is she going to find this 10 minutes that she's got to do. And then she read this book. Unfortunately, I cannot remember who it was by or what it was called, but it was something like, the 1 minute meditation.
Yeah.
So it was just, listen, if you're at the supermarket and you're waiting, in the queue to go pay for your goods, that's your time. Just stop, hold, breathe, and just doing that process, you've just parked the car, stop, hold, breathe. It really, really changed her life. So, yeah, just getting those little bits of time in is a million times better than trying to try and fit an hour in and then thinking, "Oh, no, I can't. I'll leave it."
Mhm. Yeah, because you self-sabotage then, don't you?
Yes.
And what we want to do is to kind of start to reduce the self-sabotage and invite more kindness to self.
Yeah, definitely. And it's that self-care, isn't it?
And
Yeah.
self-kindness too, just be kind to yourself. The thing is, we're all humans. We're all a human mess anyway, and anybody who thinks they're not, I'd be questioning, to be honest, because we're all going to fall into black holes. We're all going to, fall off wagons. We're all going to, we can't all live in love and light all the time because it's not authentic and it's not true to being a human. Because as a
Yeah.
human being, you're going to experience every emotion all day, throughout a day. And so it's just learning how to navigate your way through that without beating yourself up,
Mm.
and honor your humanness. It's all very nice to like the nice bits of yourself, but you've got to learn to like the not so nice bit, the things that you've labeled not so nice,
Yeah.
the human bits that are kind of murky.
Yeah, the ego bits that we've all got.
Yeah, of course we do. So I think there's also that piece as well. It's just learning more kindness to yourself for being human and for being just part of what it is to be a human being. Which is messy. It's messy
Yeah,
for most of us.
it is.
It's okay to be messy. You know. So, and just,
Fantastic.
yeah, and learn to
So
do the mess.
yes, yeah, definitely. So this heart meditation, how much time do you need to take us through this?
I can do it in 3 minutes, 4 minutes.
Oh wow, okay. I was giving you like 20.
We can do 20 minutes, but I'd rather do less just to give people an opportunity to see how you could use it without having to have 20 minutes.
Yes, fantastic, especially after what we've just spoken to. That's beautiful. Okay, then I am going to run the jingle and then we're going to come back to Jyoti and I'm going to hand over the reins to her.
Okay.
Stay sane with Jane, the show that helps you and your business to thrive, not just survive. Tune in each week as Jane connects with guests in the wellness, business, and publishing worlds, bringing you the most up-to-date training, techniques, healing, and guidance for growth, mindset, and motivation. Each session includes a magical guided meditation led by Jane or one of her special guests. Hello, and we're back. And I am going to mute myself and hand the reins over to Jyoti to take us through this heart meditation.
Thank you. So let's start by just bringing your hands onto the energetic space of your heart, which is kind of in the center of your chest around the level of your armpits. And I'm just going to invite you either to close your eyes, but if you're not comfortable to close your eyes, just put your gaze down. So you don't need to be looking at me. And so just put your gaze down somewhere where you're going to be the least distracted, actually. And just start to just bring some gentle awareness to your breath. So letting the breath come in and letting the breath go out. And you might feel your hands just moving up and down as you breathe in and as you breathe out. And then I'm going to invite you to say hello to your heart. So oftentimes we forget to do that. So you might say to your heart, how are you today? And sometimes our hearts feel very expansive and joyful, and other times our hearts can feel quite bruised and needing to be kind of held and taken care of. And whatever you meet there is completely fine. We don't need to change it. We just learn to listen, and we learn to be with, and we learn to nurture ourselves with whatever it is that we need in this moment. So just taking a few moments to really connect with that beautiful heart that you have. And then what you might start to feel is the heart, the breath of the heart. So sometimes there's that feeling of wanting to expand your breath beyond your heart space, above you, below you, in front of you, and behind you. You could just let that happen if that's what feels right for you. And other times we just need to keep it small and safe and protected. So just learning to just be with and feel whatever's there for you in your breath of your heart today. There's something beautiful about just letting the breath as it gently comes in, just gently touch you inside. We're soothing you in its touch, holding you in its touch. And in this way, you start to make friends with your breath. Allowing your breath to hold you, allowing your breath to support you. And then we could add some words to say to our hearts. I'm listening. And I'm here for you. I'm listening deeply to the call of my heart. And I'm here for you. I think for many of us, it's not often that we really give ourselves these moments to be there for ourselves, to be our own best friend, to connect on that deeper level with ourselves and our hearts. And then we might add to those words, I love you. I'm listening. I'm here for you. And I love you. Just noticing what arises as you say these words to yourself. Listening deeply to the call of your heart. Feeling the breath. Feeling those words. I'm listening. I'm here for you. And I love you. And knowing that at any moment in your day, you can always just bring your hands back onto your heart and just hold yourself, acknowledge yourself, and just have that moment of intimacy, if you like, with yourself. And then you might want to just take a slightly deeper breath. Thank your heart for showing you whatever it's shown you today. Thank yourself for taking the time to be with your heart. And then you might want to rub the palms of your hands together just to get some warmth and some heat into the palms of your hands. And then you might want to just rest your head inside your hands, opening your eyes inside the palms of your hands so that you can just draw in that beautiful warmth. And then closing your eyes one more time, rubbing the palms of your hands together again. And this time you can just gently wash your face with your hands or your neck or your shoulders. And then we'll end the practice by giving yourselves a beautiful, big, squeezy, I love me hug. Don't think there's enough hugs in the world. So give yourself a beautiful, I love me squeezy hug. And thank you for practicing with me today. And I hope that the practice was useful for you and that you can use it in any way you can.
Thank you so much, Jyoti. That was beautiful. Very, very relaxing, calming, centering. And my body was definitely telling me, have a little lie down after you've recorded this. Go and lie down for 10-15 minutes. So I am definitely going to do that.
Good.
Thank you so much for joining us. Are there any offers for the audience, or how do they get in touch with you to book courses?
Well, the best way to book, to find out more about us is just to go on our website, which is www.specialyoga.co.uk. And everything you want is there. We also have an app which has a lot of free resources on it, which, all around self-care, which is through Mighty Networks. And I'm pretty sure you can access it through the website as well. But if you go on Mighty Networks and you put on Special Yoga, you'll come to us, and it's free to join. And there are loads of free resources there and a nice community.
Fantastic. And the website is really, really informative. It's easy to navigate. In the home, you can look at practitioners, the community, teacher training, stuff for schools, on-demand courses. It's all here, and you can sign up for a newsletter and get in contact, and it's really easy to navigate, and it's full of beautiful, beautiful pictures of all sorts of children and adults doing breathing and yoga and just being there together for each other. So thank you so much for all your words of wisdom. I feel like we're really ending on some Zen right now, and everybody is nice and super calm. Any last words of wisdom before we go?
Thank you, and practice. Just keep practicing.
Yes.
Just a little bit at a time. Just a little bit at a time. Make it manageable and be kind to yourself.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jyoti.
Jane, it's lovely to be able to be with you today. Thanks.
Thank you, and we will see you again very soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Stay Sane with Jane, the show that helps you and your business to thrive, not just survive. Tune in each week as Jane connects with guests in the wellness, business and publishing worlds, bringing you the most up-to-date training, techniques, healing and guidance for growth, mindset and motivation. Each session includes